Now, for the lack of a better word, I'm going to stick with the term soft skills. But I think that these skills I'm going to be discussing in today's video are anything but soft. I think the reason why they've been called soft is because, they're not tangible, right? So they're intangible skills. And if you're in graduate school or you have a PhD, and you want to work outside of academia, even if you want to work in academia, to be honest, anywhere you want to work, having these skills are always going to set you apart and make you look like an attractive job candidate. And a lot of them we actually learned or picked up in graduate school, or you're going to pick them up in graduate school. But sometimes we don't recognize them for what they are. So today's video, we're going to be talking about 10 soft or intangible skills that you probably don't realize that you have. The first one is communication. Now, I will say that I think that communication is a skill that you will continuously need and continuously build up throughout your entire life. I don't think there's any point in your life where you have capped when it comes to learning effective communication skills. You tend to get a really great foundation in communication whilst you are in grad school. Now, what are we doing in grad school? Usually in grad school, we have a research topic, we're testing it, we're presenting it to the committee members, we're presenting it at conferences, and we're trying to convince people that this story that we are testing out is worth telling, right? And it's really important that you realize this for the learning opportunity that it is, and not to see it as something that's a burden, because you're going to need communication skills and effective communication skills all throughout your life. Because believe it or not, whether you think it or not, you're always communicating something. So why not communicate it effectively? Teamwork is another one that I realize that a lot of graduate students, PhDs don't sometimes think about. But even though by the nature of a PhD, you tend to be testing things on your own and coming up with hypotheses and conclusions, you do end up doing some teamwork, especially if you're working with undergrads in your program, if you're working with your advisor to come up with some of these conclusions. Whatever it is, there is opportunity. And if there isn't opportunity, I really strongly encourage you to find the opportunity to work within teams. Now, I know, I'm an introvert and I would rather do things by myself, because sometimes, yes, I know what some of you are thinking. Sometimes you think that if I do this myself, I'm going to get ahead faster. And a lot of that comes from maybe bad experiences that we have all had. Let me know in the comments below. We've all had, let's say, when we're in school and we're put into a team, a group, and there are some people who do a lot of the work and there are some people who do very, very minimal work or don't do any of the work at all. And so a lot of us pick up some of those bad, remember some of those, some of those bad memories from those times, and sometimes don't want to work with a team. But if this is something that you're not already doing or haven't gotten a lot of exposure to, developing that soft skill of working with teams and pulling on the strengths of others and communicating with others is also going to be really valuable to your career. Adaptability. Listen, I learned a lot of adaptability when I was in grad school and in my postdoc, and I'm still learning a lot of adaptability now. And why is this important? I think it's really important because one thing that's constant about life is change. Right? One thing that's extremely constant about life is change. And for a lot of us, when change comes our way, we rail against it. Our brains do not like change, and we everything within us opposes change, right? But one of the things that I have learned is when I'm facing a new thing, facing a new challenge, I always tell myself, okay, I know my brain, hello brain, you are fighting against this new thing, but what can we learn? What's the new thing we can learn? In which ways can I grow? Who can I talk to, right? Well, this is one of the really, really important things. Like, over the past maybe 4 years, right, I moved from academia into science writing and worked there for 1.5 years before I changed companies to the company I'm currently at. This is a lot of change within a 4-year span. And each time, one of the things I've had to learn to do is realize I'm in a new environment. I don't know everything. And so I find people. This is one thing that I was reading a book, and I'll make sure to put it up on the screen, about your first 90 days at a job. And one of the things is locate key resource people and ask them questions. And this has been really, really helpful to me in embracing change and adapting to that new change. Problem solving is a big superpower that so many of us have because of the nature of our training. Because especially for those of us that may be in experimental environments, experiments don't always go well. Experiments don't always go well. They like, actually, I remember in grad school, a postdoc once told me that, if your experiments go well, 30 to 40% of the time you are winning as a grad student. And I'm sure some of you will argue that it's even lower than that, right? So things go awry all the time, especially within research. And being able to take a step back and say, okay, there's a problem. What's the problem? And how can we solve the problem? And sometimes we can solve it, and sometimes in trying to solve it, we realize we can't. It's not a solvable problem. But whatever it is, that problem solving skill set that you have, a lot of industries out there need it. And so it's a really valuable skill to highlight and to develop. Critical thinking, right? When you get data, you're analyzing it, you're thinking about it. I was joking the other day to somebody that a lot of my job right now is really staring at data for a long time and trying to make sense of it. And if you're starting grad school and you don't have that yet, don't worry, trust me, you're gonna develop it. And being able to interpret data and be able to take that interpretation and apply it to real world situations is really a great skill. Sometimes we overlook that as PhDs, as people that are in graduate school, but critical thinking is a really valuable skill set to highlight. In a lot of places do value that skill. Your work ethic, you may not realize it, but you show up every day at a certain time, you run your experiments, you collect your data, you document the data, you write up the data, all these things that you're doing is building a certain work ethic in you. Now, of course, there's always that occasional grad student who may not have a very vigilant supervisor, who may have questionable work ethic. But in general, most people that I encountered in grad school had excellent work ethic. And I think that, it's only fair for you to say that, to realize that and to highlight that. Because one of the things you want to be is reliable, right? And for somebody who you can't rely on, you know how that is. Anyway, moving on. All right. So a lot of the time when we talk about leadership, people think about leaders of a country, leaders of a company, people who are in key, obvious positions. But leadership really is taking initiative and inspiring others around you, right? And so do you take initiative? Most likely, as a grad student, you are taking initiative, and most likely you are inspiring others around you. And this is why sometimes when you have a PhD and you're in a certain environment, it's likely that you will be one of the leaders there, right? Because there is that training built into you that, even taking the step to go get a master's or a PhD, that's like a huge thing. I'm not saying this is not true for bachelors, but because most of you on this channel are in graduate school or have a PhD, this is why I'm saying this, that we do have a leadership built into the training that we get. And it's a great thing for you to highlight. You take initiative, you inspire others, you lead others, even if it's just two people, right? I remember when I was in graduate school, I got to mentor 2 undergrads. Okay, that was a showcase of my leadership. And so it's a great way for you to showcase that leadership. And in undergrad, I had I took various leadership positions, but don't always see leadership as, being that visible person in the room. See it as you take initiative, you make good decisions, you inspire others, you take responsibility, right, for your actions, and don't blame it on everybody else. That's leadership. Time management. Listen, I'm not one of those people that has a calendar that is completely time blocked, but I do agree that graduate school taught me how to manage my time much better. And so whether you're like me who doesn't have a calendar that is like completely color blocked and I follow everything every single day, or if you're one of those people that cannot function unless your calendar is time blocked, wherever you are on this spectrum, right? Time management skills are something that if you don't have it, you're going to need to develop to some extent, right? So that you are managing your work well, so that you are meeting deadlines, right? So that you are submitting things on time, so that people can, again, reliability is really, really important out there in the world. And so understanding that graduate school and the PhD experience really does give you time management skills, or, that you have to learn it. It's one of those great skills, one of those great soft, intangible skills that sometimes some of us don't really realize is so valuable. Creativity. All right. So when we think of creativity, I think most people think of the arts, right? We're thinking of people that can paint, people that can sing, people that can play instruments. We think of those people as the creatives, right? But the reality is, regardless of your discipline, if you are undertaking a PhD program, you're going to have to tap into some creativity sometime. All right. Sometimes it could be something as tangible as within your PowerPoint presentation. Sometimes it could be the creativity you employ when you're solving problems, right? So creativity and problem solving are related that way. Sometimes it could be your writing. I remember in graduate school, one of my committee members said, "The way you write is amazing." And then she went on to critique me about something else. Hello, Stefania. But yeah, she went on to critique me about something else which she needed to critique me about. But we don't realize it, but that creativity, right? That comment she made really planted a seed in me, and I really believe it has helped me to be where I am in the kind of job that I am right now. Even though I don't do creative writing per se, that creativity in writing, that smooth way the writing flow that made that comment has been helpful in my current career. Emotional intelligence. Understanding your emotions and understanding the emotions of others and why they may be reacting to something in a certain way, whether you agree with it or not, is really, really important. There's so many things out there in the world where I may not agree with the premise, but I can understand why the person is feeling that way. I can understand why the person is reacting that way. And there are times when I'm also reacting to something and I'm like, well, wait a minute, let's take a step back. I know, because a lot of the time when we are reacting to something emotionally, we're not really using the rational portions of our brains, right? But having an understanding of your own emotions, having an understanding of other people's emotions, again, whether you agree or not, I think is really a great skill for us to especially work with a diverse set of people, because we're not all the same. We're all really, really different in so many ways and on so many levels. And just wanting to work with people that think like you, look like you, smell like you, eat like you, right, is not very helpful. It doesn't give you the opportunity to learn. And so having emotional intelligence is not only important for, of course, regulating your emotions and understanding things, but it helps you work with other people. Another thing that I think emotional intelligence does is that it helps you, for me, and I'm going to just go use this example because I think this has been so great, is that it has helped me to not take critiquing of my work personally. I'm a very sensitive person, and in the past, I would take a critique of my work as a critique of me personally. And so I'd be so offended and so hurt that why did they critique my work? But if you're in graduate school, then you'll learn very, very quickly that people can tear your work apart, right? And it's really important for you to develop it's an emotional intelligence. I realize is, again, it's not something that comes naturally to all of us. It's really, some people I think naturally have some of it, but I think it's something that you really have to develop. And so like I said, I used to be a very sensitive person, but over time I learned to separate myself from my work, so that when people critique my work, I can stand back as myself and say, why do they see it that way? Why do they look at it that way? Oh, okay, yes, yes, actually they're right. This thing I did here was not so great. Maybe here's how I can tweak that and change that and make it better. And sometimes I'll even ask for the feedback from the person, all right? Usually ask the feedback from the person that's critiquing. Sometimes some people just want to critique just to critique and I'm mean about it. I would throw that in the garbage, okay? But when you have constructive criticism of your work or anything you're doing, I highly encourage you to, first of all, begin developing that emotional intelligence. And this is not the same as, by the way, emotional intelligence is not the same as just accepting abuse. That's completely different conversation, but I wanted to put that in there. But being emotionally aware, being aware of your own emotions, being able to separate yourself from your work, being able to understand the emotions of others is really important if you're going to succeed at work. These skills will make you a rockstar candidate for any job. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, let me know in the comments below and let me know, are there any other soft intangible skills that I didn't mention in this video? Go ahead and put that in the comments below.